I always believed that a stable marriage was built on trust and openness. Yet life has a way of concealing secrets beneath even the sturdiest of facades. My name is Michael Davis, and for as long as I can remember, I prided myself on being a dedicated husband and a hardworking professional. My wife, Emily, and I had built what appeared to be an idyllic life in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside of Columbus, Ohio. Neat lawns, friendly neighbors, and weekend barbecues created the picture-perfect scene that many only dream about. But behind that comfortable veneer lay a hidden world, a collection of decisions and clandestine actions that I had so carefully kept under wraps. For years, I had harbored a secret that I believed would never see the light of day. It began innocuously enough, the thrill of a risky wager at a local card table, a flutter of adrenaline every time I placed a bet that defied the safe boundaries of my day-to-day existence. What started as an occasional indulgence soon escalated into something far more consuming. Late nights at the office, mysterious phone calls in the darkness, and whispered conversations in back alleys became my new normal. I justified these choices as a temporary escape from the drudgery of routine, a hidden passion that kept me feeling alive. I even went so far as to create a secret compartment beneath our bedroom's modest bed. There, I stored envelopes stuffed with cash, a ledger of bets, and documents that recorded my increasingly precarious entanglements with figures I could only describe as unsavory. I remember the early days of our marriage, when Emily's gentle laughter and bright optimism made the world seem full of possibility. She was the kind of person who could see beauty in the mundane, a warm cup of coffee on a chilly morning, the way sunlight danced on our hardwood floors. Yet as time wore on, I sensed an undercurrent of disquiet in her eyes when I returned home late or when I hesitated to discuss my day. I chalked it up to the stress of our everyday lives, never suspecting that the cause lay in the double life I was nurturing. Every night, as I closed the door behind me, I reminded myself that I was protecting her from a part of me that was dangerous, volatile, a part that might shatter the very foundation of our shared dreams. My work in the corporate world had afforded me the comforts of a good salary and a respected reputation, but it also fostered an insidious boredom. I began to feel caged by expectations, my potential seemingly limited to quarterly reports and boardroom presentations. The allure of the underground gambling circuit, a world of unpredictable outcomes and high stakes, proved irresistible. Soon enough, I found myself making secret trips to a backroom casino in Columbus, where the currency of risk and reward was measured in hushed tones and furtive glances. I met individuals with nicknames like Slim and Rooster, men and women who navigated the edges of legality with ease. They welcomed me as someone who understood the thrill of chance, but with every handshake and exchanged nod, I sank deeper into a mire of complicity and danger. In those moments, as I stashed the day's winnings in my secret hideaway beneath the bed, I felt a twisted sense of liberation. I convinced myself that I was merely a man with a harmless vice, that the world of clandestine bets was no more morally dubious than the corporate games I played by day. Yet each time I hid an envelope behind the loose slats of our bed frame, the weight of my deception pressed upon me. I knew that if Emily ever discovered the truth, our life together would shatter like fragile glass under the strain of betrayal. Despite these growing internal conflicts, Emily continued to radiate warmth and love in our home. Our marriage was built on years of shared memories, quiet dinners after long workdays, spontaneous trips to the lake, and whispered promises made under starlit skies. I often wondered if she sensed that something was amiss. Sometimes, in the dead silence of night, I thought I could almost hear her heartbeat quicken in her sleep, as if reacting to a danger she could not quite name. I tried to dismiss these fleeting moments as mere figments of an overactive conscience. After all, what harm could a few secret wagers do if I kept them hidden away, tucked neatly under the bed where nobody would ever think to look? I meticulously organized my secret life, believing that compartmentalizing my two worlds would keep them forever separate. I made sure that all evidence of my late-night escapades was locked away and hidden from view. In my mind, I was maintaining a delicate balance, one foot in the safe, familiar world of Emily and our shared dreams, and the other in a shadowy realm of risk that fed my need for excitement. Each morning as I greeted Emily with a smile, I felt an odd mix of guilt and exhilaration. It was as if I were living a double life in a spy movie, a man of two faces, one for public consumption and one reserved for the darkness of hidden impulses. That balance, however, is a fragile thing. As the days turned into weeks, subtle shifts began to occur. The phone calls grew more urgent, the meetings more secretive. I found myself growing anxious whenever I passed by the bedroom, as if the very room we once shared as a sanctuary might reveal the evidence of my hidden transgressions. And though I stowed away every risky detail with painstaking care, I could not help but wonder how long before the cracks in my carefully constructed facade would widen enough for the truth to seep through. I was aware that I was dancing on the edge of disaster, a realization that gnawed at me in quiet moments of introspection. Still, I pressed on, driven by the seductive promise of excitement and the belief that I could keep every secret locked away. I convinced myself that the risks were manageable, that I was in control. Yet beneath the surface, the hidden envelope of cash and the ledger of bets were not just symbols of a harmless vice, but harbingers of a storm waiting to break. And in that silent, guarded space beneath the bed, I was laying the foundation for a revelation that would soon shatter the illusion of our perfect life. As I drifted off to sleep each night, I prayed that the shadows in our bedroom would remain undisturbed, that Emily's trust would never be betrayed by the secrets I harbored. Little did I know, the calm before the storm was about to give way to an upheaval that would change everything. Lately, an inexplicable tension had begun to settle over our home, a tension that grew with each passing day like a slow-burning fuse. I'd started receiving calls in the dead of night, and my once predictable schedule became punctuated by unexplained absences. I tried to maintain a semblance of normality, assuring myself that these were just temporary deviations from the life Emily and I had built together. But beneath that carefully rehearsed calm, my pulse would race at the thought that the secret I'd guarded so jealously might soon be exposed. It began subtly. I noticed Emily's eyes lingering a fraction longer on the clock when I left for late meetings, her smile fading ever so slightly when I returned home with vague explanations about an urgent project at work. At first, I convinced myself that it was nothing more than the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. But then came the nights when I would catch a glimpse of her in the hallway, watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I tried to brush it off as mere coincidence, a trick of the light, perhaps, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was looking for something she believed I was hiding. One chilly autumn evening, after a particularly long day at the office, I returned home to find the house unervingly quiet. Emily was in the kitchen, her back turned as she busied herself with preparing dinner. The clatter of utensils and the hum of the refrigerator were the only sounds that greeted me as I hung up my coat. I offered her a warm smile and a kiss on the cheek, trying to mask the disquiet gnawing at me. But behind her polite nod and soft, "Hello, Michael," I sensed a storm of unspoken questions swirling in her eyes. That night, as I settled into bed, I couldn't help but feel a growing pressure in the room, a sense that the air was charged with secrets and suppressed emotions. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation and every lingering glance from earlier in the day. I told myself that nothing was amiss, that I was simply overthinking the natural curiosities that come with long-term companionship. Yet, deep down, I feared that the meticulous system I had constructed to keep my secrets safe was beginning to crack. In the days that followed, the signs became more pronounced. Emily's once luminous eyes turned guarded and distant. She began to ask questions, subtle, almost imperceptible queries about my whereabouts late at night, about the odd receipts I would accidentally leave in my briefcase, about the hushed tones in my phone conversations. I answered with vague reassurances, each word carefully measured to deflect suspicion. But every time I caught her looking at me, there was an intensity in her gaze, as though she were trying to read between the lines of my carefully chosen words. My heart pounded every time I passed by our bedroom door. I'd run my hand along the edge of the frame, feeling the smooth wood beneath my fingertips, and for a moment, I'd imagined that the very structure of our home could offer me protection against the encroaching truths. I began to question whether the secrets I had hidden away beneath the bed, the envelopes, the ledger, the discreet reminders of my nocturnal escapades, could remain forever concealed. I had always believed that my life was compartmentalized, one part dedicated to Emily, the other to a dangerous, exhilarating underworld of chance and risk. But with each passing day, the boundaries blurred. The late-night phone calls grew more frequent, and my visits to the backroom casino became laced with an urgency that I had not felt before. I started receiving messages, cryptic and terse, from contacts I had trusted implicitly. Their tone was no longer casual. It was laden with implication and warning. I would lie awake in bed, my mind racing through scenarios of what might happen if Emily discovered even a single misplaced document, or if she accidentally uncovered the secret compartment beneath the bed. The thought of her stumbling upon that hidden trove filled me with dread. I began to notice that even the smallest sounds, the creak of a floorboard, the distant hum of traffic, seemed amplified in the quiet hours of the night. I started double-checking the locks on every door, as if fortifying our home against the inevitable storm that would one day break through. Yet, in the midst of my frantic preparations, I failed to see that the greatest threat was not from the shadows outside, but from the one person who knew me better than anyone else. Unbeknownst to me, Emily had begun her own quiet investigation. Her once lenient curiosity had hardened into something more determined, a resolve to discover the truth behind my elusive behavior. I caught her lingering by the bedroom door more than once, her eyes fixed on me with a mixture of hurt and suspicion that cut deeper than any reprimand could. I wondered if perhaps I was no longer the man she once fell in love with, a man capable of shielding his beloved from the darker aspects of life. But no matter how hard I tried to reassure her with comforting words and dismissive smiles, I could feel the distance between us widening. Late one evening, as I prepared for another clandestine meeting with a contact from the gambling circuit, I sensed that the air was thicker than usual, as if the house itself were holding its breath. I left the bedroom with one final glance at the neatly made bed, unaware that Emily had not retired to the living room as usual. Instead, driven by an intuition that defied my carefully maintained secrets, she had crept silently toward our bedroom. In that moment, I had no inkling that she was on the brink of discovering the very evidence of my duplicity, evidence hidden in plain sight, beneath the bed where I had stashed away my sins. Little did I know that the calm before the storm was rapidly dissolving, replaced by a tension that would soon shatter the fragile equilibrium of our lives. That fateful night arrived as a blur of restless energy and an almost palpable sense of impending reckoning. I had just returned from one of my secretive meetings, a hurried rendezvous with a contact known only as Tony, whose gravelly voice over a burner phone had relayed a message laden with urgency. My mind was preoccupied with the logistics of the next wager and the mounting pressure of settling old scores when I failed to notice the slight sound of shuffling feet echoing from the direction of our bedroom. In the dim glow of the hallway light, I made my way to the sanctuary of our room. I was so absorbed in my thoughts that I scarcely registered the faint rustling coming from behind the large, modest bed we had shared for years. Unbeknownst to me, Emily, driven by the silent storms of suspicion that had been building for weeks, had taken a drastic step. Instead of retiring to the living room as she had done on other nights, she had quietly slipped under the bed, hiding in the cramped space between the mattress and the floor, to witness for herself what I had been so desperate to conceal. I set down my duffel bag and began rifling through a drawer for something I needed, a document, perhaps a set of receipts, or even a note from Tony detailing our next move. My hands trembled ever so slightly, a mixture of adrenaline from the meeting and a premonition of something amiss. I didn't hear her gasp at first. I was too consumed with my own inner turmoil. Then, as I lifted a small envelope from a hidden compartment in the bed's framework, a compartment I had painstakingly built to hide my illicit winnings, I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. For a brief, heart-stopping second, I thought it might be a trick of the light. But it wasn't. Someone was there. Time seemed to slow as I realized that the source of that movement could only be one person. Emily. My mind raced, trying to understand how she could have been here without my noticing. I froze. Every instinct in me screamed to grab the envelope and hide it, to restore order to a situation that was rapidly spiraling out of control. Instead, I found myself rooted to the spot, caught between the urge to confront her and the dread of what her discovery would mean. From my hidden vantage, Emily's eyes, wide with shock and hurt, reflected not only the dim light of the bedside lamp, but also the undeniable evidence of my duplicity. I heard her breathe in sharply, a sound that reverberated in the stillness of the room. In that suspended moment, everything came crashing down. Every secret, every midnight phone call, every hastily concealed envelope. I could almost see the betrayal etched in the lines of her face, the look of disbelief that told me she had seen far more than I had ever intended for her to know. I took a step toward the edge of the bed, my heart pounding so fiercely I feared it might shatter the fragile barrier between us. Emily, I managed to croak, my voice barely audible above the silence. The sound of my own voice made me acutely aware of the betrayal I was about to face. For a long, interminable minute, there was no reply. Only the quiet hum of the night and the distant sounds of a neighborhood settling into sleep. Then, as if summoned by my tremulous plea, a soft sob escaped her. The sound was both heartbreaking and damning, a mixture of sorrow and anger that pierced through the haze of my own guilt. I tried to speak again, to offer an explanation or an apology, but the words were caught in my throat. I reached out a hand, as if to bridge the chasm that had suddenly yawned open between us, but it was too late. In that instant, the secret that I had guarded so fiercely had erupted into a revelation that I knew would shatter the foundation of everything we had built. Slowly, painfully, I inched around the bed, my eyes never leaving the hidden figure beneath it. Every movement felt as though it were measured in slow motion, each second heavy with the weight of irrevocable consequences. I could see that Emily's eyes shimmered with tears that she had fought so hard to keep at bay, and her lips trembled as if on the verge of uttering something that would forever alter the course of our lives. As I drew closer, I realized that nothing could ever undo this moment. The careful lines I had drawn between my two lives were now irrevocably blurred. I whispered again, "Emily, please," but my words were swallowed by the quiet devastation of the scene. I was standing at the crossroads of my own making, and there was no turning back. In that cramped space beneath our bed, illuminated by the weak light of a bedside lamp, the full magnitude of my double life was laid bare. Emily's wide, incredulous eyes, the tremor in her voice, and the shock that radiated from her very being confirmed the worst of my fears. The person I loved most in the world had seen what I had hoped to hide. And in that moment, I knew that the fragile equilibrium of our life together was broken forever. The morning after that harrowing night dawned with a cold, bitter clarity, a clarity that could not be masked by the usual soft light of early morning. I awoke before the sun, restless and tormented by the memory of Emily's tear-streaked face as she lay hidden beneath our bed. Every second of sleep had been plagued by guilt and regret, and when I finally opened my eyes, the quiet room offered no solace. I sensed that the inevitable confrontation was upon us. I found Emily sitting at the kitchen table, a single mug of coffee growing cold beside her, as she stared vacantly out the window. Her posture was rigid, her eyes distant, and there was an unmistakable tension in the silence that hung between us. I cleared my throat softly as I approached, unsure of whether to bridge the gap with gentle words or to wait for her to speak first. The minutes stretched on painfully, each tick of the clock a reminder of how fragile our bond now was. "Emily," I began tentatively, my voice faltering as I searched her face for any sign of forgiveness. She turned to meet my gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow, anger, and disbelief. "I know you saw," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet resonating with the weight of a lifetime of unasked questions. I sank into the chair opposite her, the guilt pressing down on me like a physical burden. "I'm so sorry," I said, the words feeling inadequate even as they left my lips. I tried to piece together an explanation, a litany of half-truths and poorly veiled justifications. But each attempt crumbled under the intensity of her gaze. The trust that we had built over years of shared laughter and quiet comfort was now in tatters before me. "You lied to me, Michael," she said, her voice rising with a tremor of raw emotion. "I trusted you. I believed in us. And now I see that everything was just a facade." Her words cut deep, each syllable a reminder of the promises I had broken. I wanted to reach out, to take her trembling hand and promise that I would fix everything, but I knew that some breaches of trust were too deep to mend with mere apologies. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The silence was filled with the echoes of that terrible night beneath the bed. The night when my carefully hidden secrets had come crashing into our shared reality. I remembered the way her eyes had widened, the way her breath had caught as she realized that I was not the man she thought she knew. I remembered that sound, a soft, choked sob that had signaled the irrevocable fracture of our lives. Finally, I gathered the courage to speak again. "Emily, I need you to understand something," I said slowly, choosing each word with care. "I never meant to hurt you. My voice faltered as I tried to explain the relentless pressures of my life, the lure of a world that promised excitement and an escape from a mundane existence. I was drawn into something I thought I could control, something that I believed would remain separate from our life here. I thought I was just living two parallel lives, but I realized now how wrong I was." Her eyes glistened with tears as she shook her head. "Two parallel lives? Michael, I married you because I trusted you completely. I never imagined there would be a secret you hidden away like that." Her voice wavered, equal parts anguish and disbelief. "How long have you been lying to me? How many more secrets are there that I don't know about?" I sighed heavily, the enormity of my betrayal weighing on every fiber of my being. "It started a few years back," I admitted, my tone resigned. "At first, it was just small bets, something to feel alive amidst the monotony. But then it spiraled out of control, and I got involved with people who operate in the shadows. I made promises I couldn't keep, and I thought I could compartmentalize it all. I built that secret space under our bed to hide my mistakes, to separate that dangerous world from the life we've built together." I paused, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "I'm sorry, Emily. I'm so sorry." Her face contorted with a mix of pain and disbelief. "I don't know if sorry is enough," she whispered. "Every lie, every secret, it's like a betrayal all over again." The room felt suffocating as I searched her eyes for a glimmer of forgiveness, for any sign that we could somehow rebuild the trust that had been so violently shattered. In that moment, I realized that confession was only the first step on a long road toward redemption. The weight of my actions was immense, and I knew that my words, however sincere, might never fully repair the damage. "I promise you, Emily," I said quietly, reaching out a tentative hand, "I will do whatever it takes to make this right. I'll end this dangerous game. I'll cut ties with those who've led me astray, and I'll spend every day proving that I can be the man you believed I was." Tears slipped silently down her cheeks as she recoiled for a moment, caught between the impulse to believe and the sting of betrayal. "I need time," she murmured, voice trembling with an intensity that spoke of heartbreak and cautious hope. "Time to think, time to decide if I can ever trust you again." That day, as we sat in the silence of our small kitchen, the once strong pillars of our shared dreams seemed to tremble under the weight of my confessed sins. I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with pain, regret, and the arduous task of rebuilding something that felt irreparably broken. But even as the enormity of my mistakes loomed before us, a small part of me held on to a desperate hope that through honesty, through relentless effort, perhaps we could one day find a way back to each other. In the hush of that morning, with the bitter taste of remorse lingering in the air, I vowed to confront the demons of my past and face the consequences of my actions. I realized that redemption was not a promise I could make lightly. It was a journey I would have to undertake step by agonizing step. And though I could not erase the pain of that night beneath the bed, I could only hope that in time, Emily might find it in her heart to forgive me. In the weeks and months that followed, the fallout from that fateful night became the silent undercurrent in every conversation, every shared glance, and every long, lonely evening in our once happy home. The secret that had been unearthed beneath our bed had not only shattered the illusion of our perfect life, it had forced both of us into a painful reckoning with the truth. Every day, I woke with the echo of Emily's sorrowful eyes and the weight of my guilt anchoring me to the past. I was forced to confront the choices that had led me down this perilous path. The allure of high-stakes wagers, the dangerous liaisons, and the thrill of living on the edge. I knew that the dangerous world I had once sought to control was now out of my grasp, and its consequences had seeped into every corner of my existence. Determined to make amends, I began the arduous process of untangling myself from the web of deceit. I severed connections with those who had fed my addiction to risk and took deliberate steps to resolve the mounting debts that had once seemed manageable. Each day was a battle between my old impulses and the desire to rebuild the trust that I had so recklessly broken. Emily, for her part, retreated into a silence filled with conflicted emotions. She alternated between anger and sorrow, her eyes often distant as if lost in a memory of the man I once was. We spent long evenings at the kitchen table, rarely speaking more than a few guarded words. I could see the pain etched into every line of her face, a constant reminder that the betrayal was not something that could simply be excused with promises of change. Yet, amid the quiet despair, there were moments, fleeting and fragile, when hope shimmered through the darkness. In the way she hesitantly reached out to help me sort through old photographs, in the gentle touch of her hand when she brushed away a tear from my cheek, I sensed that despite the deep wounds, a spark of the love we once shared still endured. Determined to prove that I was committed to change, I enrolled in counseling and support groups aimed at confronting destructive behaviors. I sought professional help to understand the compulsion that had driven me into the murky world of underground gambling. Every session was a painful excavation of long-buried truths, a journey into the darker recesses of my own psyche. I came to see that my double life had been a manifestation of unmet needs and a desperate attempt to escape the banality of everyday existence. With each painful revelation, I began to accept responsibility for the damage I had inflicted, not just on myself, but on the woman who had trusted me above all else. Emily, too, embarked on her own path of healing. She attended therapy sessions, gradually learning to articulate the hurt and confusion that had accumulated over the years. In these sessions, she confronted the betrayal and the uncertainty of a future that now seemed so precarious. There were times when our conversations were punctuated by silence, so heavy it felt as if the air itself were mourning the loss of innocence. Yet, slowly and painfully, a tentative dialogue emerged, a cautious, halting exchange of apologies, explanations, and eventually forgiveness. One crisp autumn afternoon, as leaves danced in the wind outside our window, Emily and I sat together in our living room, a space that had once been filled with laughter and now resonated with the quiet hum of reconciliation. "I don't know if I can ever forget what I saw," she said softly, her gaze fixed on a fading photograph of happier times. "But I'm willing to try to move forward if you promise to be completely honest with me from now on." Her voice trembled with both vulnerability and strength, a testament to the resilience of the human heart in the face of betrayal. I reached out and took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin and the silent plea for redemption. "I promise, Emily," I replied, my voice thick with remorse and determination. "I will never hide from you again. I will be completely open about everything, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. I want to earn your trust back, no matter how long it takes." In that moment, I knew that the path ahead would be long and arduous. There would be setbacks, moments when the old demons threatened to resurface, and days when the wounds felt too deep to heal. But we had taken the first tentative steps toward rebuilding something precious, a fragile trust that, while scarred, might one day be strong enough to support us both. Over time, our home began to shift from a place of quiet despair to one of cautious hope. We found solace in small acts of honesty, a shared cup of coffee in the early morning, an evening walk through the neighborhood where words were few but eyes spoke volumes. The memories of that terrible night beneath the bed never fully disappeared. They lingered as a stark reminder of the cost of secrecy. Yet, with every honest conversation and every sincere effort to reconcile, we slowly forged a new path, one in which the shadows of the past were met with light and accountability. Now, as I look back on those turbulent months, I realize that the storm we weathered was both a reckoning and a rebirth. The secrets I once hid under the bed had forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities and to learn that true strength lies not in deception, but in the courage to face one's mistakes and change. Emily's willingness to work through the betrayal, to find a way to forgive and rebuild, has given me hope that even the deepest wounds can heal with time, effort, and unwavering honesty. Our future remains uncertain, a delicate balance between memory and aspiration, but I now understand that every secret, every hidden compartment, and every lie has its price. I can only hope that, in time, the scars of betrayal will fade into quiet reminders of a past overcome, and that the light of trust will shine once more in the home we both cherish.